and good evening and welcome back to some former FirstRand alumni that I'm seeing in the room. I was exiled here over 10 years ago, so this is my first time back in many, many years. So this is the part where you clap and say, welcome back. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this very, very important gathering of some of the most good-looking people you'll find anywhere in the country today. I can say this for sure because I spent the rest of the day watching television, and whenever they showed people on TV, they just didn't look as good as you guys do. So congratulations for showing up. Yes, my name is Kaya Sitole, and because I tend to pull the short straws in meetings of the ABSIP NEC, I got tasked with the duty of facilitating this conversation. It wasn't out of choice, I was bullied into doing it, so if you see me being nervous, please forgive me. I had other intentions, much closer to that side of the room. That's where I would have preferred to be, but here I am on this side, as far away from the bar as possible. On that note, I'd like to just give you some guidance on where some of the facilities are. So when I asked the guys at RMB to remind where the facilities are, they said, well, they haven't changed since you left. So I'm going to take a gamble and assume that there hasn't been any reconfiguration of this space since I left a decade ago. And if I'm correct, it means that if you step outside, you'll be able to see the toilet somewhere in the vicinity. And if I'm wrong, well, I haven't been here for a while. There's also a very important corner on that side, which of course is prohibited for the next hour or two, and that is the bar. And the reason it's prohibited is because the barman said he needs some time to get the drinks very chilled. So please give him the space, and the breathing room, we will definitely open up the bar area later on. Now, I said that my name is Kaya Sitole, and that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I am the Secretary General of ABSIP. And for those of you that remember a bit of history, you'll remember that this year we're turning very old. We're turning 30, which means that we're probably as old as some people in this room. I'm not 30 yet, so I don't know what that feels like. But I can see a lot of people here at the front table who know exactly what that means. They were around when ABSIP was born, and they'll probably be around when ABSIP turns 50. So congratulations to ABSIP for turning 30 years old. So speaking of memories, some of you may remember many, many years ago, I think probably only 2 or 3 people, I can point them out, but that might be a bit problematic, who remember what a fireside chat is. And of course, a fireside chat is a concept that was started many, many years ago by President Roosevelt. It was in the middle of the war, and his citizens wanted to know what is going on. So he came up with the idea that, maybe if you have a conversation once in a while with your citizens, you get them to understand what is happening in the country that you're trying to manage. You get to deliberate on very critical issues. So the very idea of a fireside chat was initially started back then in order to enable citizens to engage with their leaders. And of course today, in the engagement that we have today, I mean you're at RMB, so you have the ultimate leader. And in fact, some of you work at RMB, you haven't had this privilege of sitting so close to your leader. So we make things happen. So as ABSIP, we said we wanted to be able to do this. So the fireside chat is really just a conversation, talk about leadership. And of course, leadership in the times that we live in is a remarkably difficult dimension. So we hope to explore some of those conversations over the course of the next couple of hours. It is also a unique privilege to be sort of in a very closed town hall, which means that you have my permission to ask any question that you'd like to ask during the Q&A, and I'll make sure that those questions are fielded. So even if it's the type of question that you thought you'd only ask at the AGM, well, here's your AGM today. And for those of you that did not make it to conference at Sun City this year, I'm making this your platform. So exercise that option. Make sure you do exercise that option. Firstly, I'd like to call upon the stage the lady who made it all happen. And she's the lady that when we said we want to have a conversation, she said, okay, cool, I've got the facilities. We're like, yeah, because we kind of didn't have the facilities. And then we said we need resources. She's like, yeah, it's fine. We'll talk about resources. And that is the head of the client coverage group, who also happens to be my younger brother's boss. So my younger brother's not here for obvious reasons. We don't want to do the whole nepotism thing. And that is Ms. Nana Piri.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be here. And as Kaya said, my name is Nana Piri, and I head up the corporate client group for RMB. RMB is the corporate investment banking division of the FirstRand group. Our group strategy is built on simple but powerful commitment to create a future of shared prosperity through enriching lives of its customers, employees, and societies it serves. We believe that this is the foundation to a sustainable future and will preserve the group's enduring promise to create long-term value and superior returns to its shareholders. At RMB, we live out this strategy of shared prosperity by ensuring that everything we do is driven by a purpose, which is to empower our people and clients to be exceptional together for all to thrive. At RMB, we live the strategy every day. Our purpose is clear. Just recently, as Kaya was mentioning, we were at our annual Sun City Awards session, and we celebrated, the big wins within the business, and also just the heart of RMB, our people. Our RMB citizens shared incredible stories that show what shared prosperity looks like in action. Tonight, I want to share 2 of those stories with you. The first story is about 2 remarkable colleagues who joined RMB through a program we call First Job. And this program is sponsored by FirstRand and RMB and FNB from a FirstRand Foundation perspective. And this program, above all our graduate intakes, focuses on giving disadvantaged youth structured employee and work experience, skills training, and development to boost their employability and entrepreneurial potential. Every year, First Job selects a group of 1,000 young people, often matriculants or TVET learners, who has never had work experience, to come and be interns in various organizations, including FNB and RMB. In our own team, the corporate client group, we have 4 First Job interns this year who are really learning and making valuable impacts to our bankers and all that our bankers do. In total, over the past 7 years where the program has been, it has taken over 5,000 youth into the program. The second story came from one of our corporate financiers. Through his everyday advisory work, he helped establish BEE trusts for education, social development, and healthcare through RMB's facilitation. One of the beneficiaries was Surgeons for Little Lives, an organization improving pediatric surgical care in public hospitals. Through this partnership, RMB contributed to renovating the pediatric burns unit at Bara Hospital, creating a world-class facility that now treats over 100 children every day. These are just 2 examples, but they capture what I love about RMB: tangible human impact of our work. They are proof of our purpose in action. And now, it's my pleasure to turn to the reason we're all here, to hear from our big boss, Mary Vilakazi, who is the CEO of FirstRand Group. Mary Vilakazi, as you know, the CEO of FirstRand Group, is South Africa's largest financial institution with market cap exceeding over 400 billion rands. She was appointed in April 2024. She's the first woman and only the second Black leader to hold this position in the group, making a historic milestone in the transformation of South Africa's corporate and banking landscape. Mary's journey started in Alexandra Township, the daughter of a self-taught bookkeeper. Her career spans executive roles, including being one of the youngest partners at PwC in 2005, Deputy CEO of MMI Holdings, and CFO of Mineral Services Group. She joined FirstRand in 2018 as Group COO, where she led the group's diversification strategy around broader Africa, Insure Invest, amongst other responsibilities as the Executive Director. She is 2016 World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. Her journey at the helm of FirstRand is testament to her resilience, strategic acumen, and commitment to inclusive leadership. In 2024, she was honored with the prestigious Greg Boyd Award by the ABSIP Association of Black Securities and Investment Professionals, ABSIP, recognizing her leadership and commitment to diversity in the financial services. In 2025, she was recognized as Fortune's 50th most powerful woman in the world. She's married to Zebulon Vilakazi and is a mother of 4 daughters. When I first met Mary, when she just arrived in the group, I was inspired that someone like her could break the glass ceiling in a banking and financial institution. I would subsequently work with Mary in her role as COO, looking after the broader Africa portfolio, and treasured her sound advice on how to navigate difficult conversations with in-country CEOs, for example. Mary is approachable yet firm as a leader, inclusive, humble, and able to see and acknowledge every person within the room, no matter who they are. She once said in one of the articles that I looked at, growing up, I would not have said I would be CEO of the largest bank in South Africa, but it is the outcome of a series of opportunities I was fortunate to have. Mary, your story reminds us that opportunity, when combined with courage, purpose, can change not only one, but lives of many. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our CEO, Mary Vilakazi, as well as the President of the ABSIP, Polo, Leteka.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I offer you water?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It's not every day that you get poured water by the CEO. So I'll take it. Thank you very much, and thanks to everybody for making time this evening to come and listen to our conversation. And Mary, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us, to talk to our members, and to talk to the financial services industry at large. It's actually quite interesting that we're doing this in August. It was not the original plan. I think originally we were thinking of doing it in July, but I think it's timely that we do it in Women's Month, where we're celebrating the advancement of women across the board. I want to start by congratulating you. Well done. I know that it is not because you are a woman that you are in this position, but I know that it is based on merit. And we're very proud of you. I want you to know that. Every woman that I've spoken to today in this room, even some of the men, we're really very proud that you've made it where you are. And I think in the time that you've been in the position, you've shown why you needed to be appointed in the position. So well done.
Thank you, Polo. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
So our audience is made up of industry leaders, so people who are older than us, more mature than us, but also our peers. Yeah, because I want to make sure that we talk to all the audiences, but we also have young people that are looking after you, who want to, to hear your story. How, where did it start, and how did you get to where you got to? And then Nana started talking a little bit about your background, having grown up in Alexandria. And I'm sure many people have heard the story in this room, but I think it's still worth telling the story for those who have not heard it before, because it's such an important and powerful story. Just tell us a little bit more about Mary, the young Mary, and how she became the CEO of FirstRand eventually.
Thank you, Polo. I looked around the room and I saw lots of people who actually should be on this couch sharing their story. Senior leaders from across the organization. So very pleased to hear that younger people online, because I think that people in this room have heard my story so many times that I have to keep myself entertained as I repeat it. Yeah, but I mean, I was born in Alex. Sometimes when I have the presence of mind to walk into the office before I read the newspaper, I do often look across from my office and look back at where I came from, and I think it always fills me with pride. I think it provides me with necessary grounding. I don't do it all the time, because sometimes I start the day and I probably have read too many emails by the time I come. I'm already on some mission, but yeah, I think I owe a lot to where I came from. I owe a lot to the people that supported me along the way. I had good teachers who at a young age told me I was gifted. So I was part of this program called Gifted Child Program. It was probably like a Saturday school program that we got on the bus to go attend at Red Hill. And then, you know, from something small, you believe that you are special. Just so that little, small early recognition of one's talent and potential opens up, I suppose, a lot of other doors. So so part of me looking at Alex is always just a reflection of how so many other people showed up to make sure that I'm able to take advantage of the opportunities that I had. But anyway, I studied in Alex all the way to almost at standard 6, so I remember that they're young people now, grade 9. Of those moments of when I look at the teachers and what they encourage us to do with very little facilities. I think our school was probably the size of this room, with compartments, and if people were too loud, you could hear them next door. But you know, for us, it was like top education, and I sincerely believe that it was, because we had such committed teachers. And so that opened up the door for me to be able to get a bursary from what was then Coopers and Lybrand. I studied to become a chartered accountant. I did articles. I wanted to join the banking group, by the way, and then I was rejected. I've had quite a number of rejections in my life.
So we should talk about that.
Oh, you should talk about that. So I joined the insurance group, and I learned a lot and got lots of opportunities and really stretched myself. And I learned a valuable lesson at the time, because, you know, my first audit out there was auditing death certificates. So the people in the room that are accountants, you know, you have to go make sure that those are valid claims. And then I was like, death certificates? I thought, what kind of job is this? I studied so hard to get here. And I learned a lot. By the time that I actually was done with articles, I really enjoyed the insurance industry, and I stayed. And I became an audit manager. I moved to Cape Town. They had an opportunity for me to move up. Moving to Cape Town was quite an interesting experience when you're from Joburg and you're full of energy. You know, from Alex, you're so driven. You get to Cape Town and people want to knock off and go catch the surf. And you're like, I'm still working. The trainee articles at Flux are leaving me in the office. Which place have I actually chosen to live here? So I lived in Cape Town, became a partner at PwC, and I think the one thing that I'll say about my time at PwC was that I really got stretched. You know, I got put on clients and audits, and I got exposed to dealing with very senior people in organizations at really a very young age. When I look back, I still think, sure, okay, so at the level that I had the opportunities to operate at it, I mean, it opened up quite a lot of doors for me. So fair to say that all my jobs that I've had were people that actually saw me when I was at PwC, or when I was a partner at PwC. Because when I left, then Metropolitan knocked on my door and said, "You want to be a non-exec?" We don't quite, but we hear you've got capacity, because I was CFO at a mineral services group, and I guess it was not the same level of intensity as being a partner. So sitting on that board, and I mean, they really were interested in my audit and actuarial contribution to sit on the board. And then Metropolitan then merged with Momentum. And I was fortunate to be on the new board of Momentum with Metropolitan. It was MMI at the time. And that's when I got to that board meeting when I was thinking about this conversation. I thought, that's still one of my most intimidating meetings. Got there, it was a board of 20 people, very big board. Okay, then you get there, there's Laurie Dippenaar, Johan Berger, Sizwe Masana, there was basically all the FirstRand founders and all the FirstRand board members who were now part and parcel of this new group. And there were 2 women on the board. And then one woman was not there for the first meeting. So I walked into this room. It was a long boardroom. And I was the only woman. I thought, jeez, like, I've never been intimidated by so many men. Even the company secretary was a man. The people serving meals and tea were all men. So I remember sitting there and actually, like, I think having a physical experience of first time, and it was just intimidating. I mean, okay, there I was. I don't even know if I was 30 or whatever, but I mean, I was still relatively young. And then you walk into a room with FirstRand founders. Okay, already you read about all these people and you struggle finding a good morning to come out of your voice. And then here was this room. And but I was determined to make sure that I'm not forgotten that I'm there, and that I don't allow myself to be completely intimidated. And from that boardroom, that's really where people that spotted me, that then said there's an opportunity at FirstRand. That's where it started. So, and a very long story of just saying that I think I did my most work. My most impressive work was at PwC, and then from then onwards, people have spotted what I can do and contribute, and that's really what has allowed me to be here today.
Yeah. And thank you so very much, Mary, for emphasizing that last bit about people seeing you where you are. Because I think when you are starting out in your career, you think, oh, I'm just here to learn and I'll do the bare minimum and things like that. But actually that's where it matters the most, because that's where people see the talent or the potential, and that's where actually your future opportunities will come from. So thank you very much for sharing that. I think for me what comes out in your story is humble beginnings don't mean that you're going to end up with humble outcomes. Because you came from a humble beginning, you took advantage of the opportunities that were presented to you and you ran with them. And I think that's also very important. But you also speak about the principles of hard work, because you wouldn't have been seen in these spaces and places if you did not work hard. Do you want to talk a little bit more, particularly to the young professionals, about the importance of hard work and how it shapes your future?
Yeah. So, Polo, my mother is one of the most hardworking people I know. And my mother, years back, moved in with us to help me look after our kids. So my husband and I were full on with our careers, and sometimes we would even bump into each other on a plane. We lived in Cape Town. So one time when my one au pair said she was retiring, I phoned my mother and I said, you know, I've now really had it. And she said, well, I've just also had it because I'm almost 60 and they're talking to me about retiring. So I said, oh, okay, why don't we have a deal? Instead of me paying somebody else here, why don't you come look after the kids? So she had to think very deeply about it. But anyway, she was very helpful, because I think raising kids with my mother around made it much easier and possible. What I did not sign up for, that I didn't think about, was that she would continue where she left off. And growing up, it was tough. So I mean, to bring back to now, what my mother still does is if she sees my car there in the morning, and I'm just having one of those late mornings of just gathering my thoughts and not leaving the house, and you'll hear her coming, walking slowly. What are you doing here, Ma? Why aren't you at work? So my kids to this day go, oh, there's the slave driver. So my mother was hardworking. I think showed me at a young age, because her mother passed away and left her with the responsibility of raising her 8 siblings, which she showed up for. And she continued to educate herself. So when I was growing up, she was doing lots of courses and putting herself through school. So I suppose I grew up seeing her work hard, and she had an expectation that I should excel. So during those days, you'd come and they'd say, oh, you're position 3 out of 72. I don't know if you ever got those reports. Just giving my age here. And so my mother, I'd say to them, oh, so-and-so got, they did well, and then they had a big celebration. They had chicken on a Saturday, not Sunday, those are big celebrations. And my mother would say, oh yeah, but you didn't get number 1. I said, well, I got number 1, nothing happened. She said, well, when you got number 1, that's when you must raise it. Oh, I got number 1, okay, very nice, you must do it again next time. So anyway, the expectations were high, and I had a good role model for working hard. And I guess hard work is addictive in a way, because, it's got a other side later on when you push yourself to that extent, because when people say, well done, oh, you're such an achiever, you're part of this gifted child, it feeds you. So before you know it, you are thriving on excelling, because that's when you're going to get the compliments. Later on in life, you have to be very careful that you are sustaining yourself and you're not relying on the external environment. Because with what I do now, Polo, nobody tells me well done.
Unfortunately.
Occasionally, maybe a shareholder's happy for a dividend. Occasionally. But yeah, you have to travel the full road to realize that one day you have to sustain yourself. But I mean, it certainly helps. And I guess the last aspect about also allowing yourself to work hard is that you get to really experience the joy from fulfilling your own potential. I always say to my kids that, it doesn't really matter what you become. I just want to know that you are living the best version of yourself. And then, because then you don't have regrets, you don't go, when I had that opportunity, I could have, I wonder what would have happened, So I think it just allows you to just kind of be at peace with whatever the outcome is. Even if it's not great, you've applied yourself, you have given it what you can and what you're capable of. So I look at my kids, and I always think you work harder than they did. I don't know if you have it as a mother, but this generation just seems to have things much easier. But I mean, they have their own versions of actually hard. I think it's hard growing up as a young person with social media, with a lot of the other pressures, And
I wanted us to talk a little bit about that, Mary, sorry to interject, because we now have younger professionals coming after us, right? And there's this big thing about work-life balance, right? And people from our generation tend to look at it and think these guys are just lazy.
I don't.
When I was growing up in the industry, I had to be the first person in the office and the last person to leave. I could not get to the office after my boss. I could not leave before my boss, And today they are the ones who arrive at 9 o'clock and you leave there at 7, and they leave at 4 or 5 when you leave at 7 or 8 in the evening. And I struggle with that, and it's quite an interesting thing to observe. And I'm just wondering whether, is it just a slave driver mentality, or do you think that the current generation has it easy, or what would you advise that they do to make sure that they still get the same output as we did, so that they're also able to stretch themselves as much as we've had to stretch ourselves?
Well, that's a good question. My chief of staff is sitting here, but when she started, I said to her, no, I can't work with people that are younger than a certain age, because there is a generational. It's different. I mean, I think Lisa, thank God for her. I mean, at least she still gets the old traditions. But it is different. I mean, I think you don't expect, there's expectations that we had of ourselves and what the system had about the hours we put in. But I learned when I was in Cape Town, when people told me, no, I'm not available because tomorrow at 9 a.m. the waves are coming because they were going surfing. And I had to say, okay, but we have to review the work here. So I've had to adapt and adjust, I think, as we went along. But I'd say two things. One is that on hard work, I mean, I don't really know how you measure it, but you have to do something for a very long time to develop expertise. So I think everybody needs to find their own form. But if you move from one thing to the other, I think you don't allow yourself to build that expertise and actually ground yourself and have confidence. Because
the 10,000 hours that Malcolm
Gladwell talks about. Yeah, so I think, if that can be an anchor for hard work, okay, I think that maybe is a relatable concept, because I don't think that changes. Look, some of how we also worked and engaged with life, I mean, I've had moments where I've had a health scare. And then I think, okay, it's not, but at the time, when I was in my 20s, I used to carry a lot of stress around, I'm here, I'm the first person this age to be a partner, first woman. I carried all these labels, as if I needed to. And that stuff is stressful. And so therefore, if I look back, I wish I had engaged differently around hard work. I still needed to care that much that I delivered, but I don't think that I needed necessarily to have all that stress. So if the aversion to working hard these days is about having a more integrated life, but still applying yourselves to reach your full potential. Okay, then I think maybe the young people have got it better. Okay, but I think there is also, I suppose, the fact that for us, I think if I look at my kids, they don't go, oh, I need to live that life, so therefore I'm going to push myself. It is different.
Yeah.
In a way, we've kind of robbed them of that opportunity to do that. So how do they define it for themselves? I often wonder, I often watch them and I wonder what that's like, because the drive I had was just from the fact that, I want to get there, and that's kind of sustained me. So, as you can see, I'm dancing around this topic about young people and hard work.
But it's complex as well, because you're quite correct that our socialization is very different. Our challenges are very different. Our ambitions are very different, right? But I think the point about spending the time to build the expertise cannot be overemphasized. I think that what we observe is that a lot of young professionals jump around a lot, and then they end up becoming generalists and not really becoming specialists, and that becomes a problem, I think, later on in life. And I think that's something that we don't emphasize enough when we talk about that. But let's talk about. Let's go back a bit. Kaya said that ABSIP is turning 30 this year. When ABSIP was started in 1995, the financial services sector, if you talked about representation, there was hardly any racial representation or gender representation. If you saw black people in banking, they would be tellers at best. So your appointment as the CEO of the FirstRand Group is a very big deal. What do you think the FirstRand Group did well to be able to get to this point? And what do you continue to do now that you are at the helm? What do you continue to do to ensure that you not only build the pipeline, but you ensure that there is enough representativity even beyond your time in this position?
Thanks, Polo. And I'm glad you are giving FirstRand actually the recognition that it did do something for me to be here. And so Alan Pullinger, who was the CEO at the time, I think he was just about to be appointed CEO. He had been talking to me for a while to say, if you ever want to leave, you must come to me. And I thought, go away. But fortunately, MMI went through a process of leadership changes, and Alan then was completely unrelenting. And when I met with when I met with Alan, the opportunity sounded interesting. The opportunity to come and learn and be exposed to a different industry, because remember at the time I'd been in insurance, I was affiliated with financial services, but not banking. And so I thought, okay, that should be interesting. Let me go find out. I was always comfortable with the leadership. I've been exposed to the CEO and former CEO from being on the Momentum board, and then a bit in Momentum about the culture. And even when we had Momentum had its own identity. They would always look back and talk about the FirstRand culture, and I think some of the values that they still carried on. So there were lots of things that were appealing, that felt that okay, I could phone Johan Berger and say, okay, what do you think? And he said, no, Alan is a good guy. I wish I would have had that opportunity, so you should take it. And so Alan actually gets the credit, because I think he saw a role and he saw where I could contribute. Having said that though, when I came here, so I started, I think I signed in March, took 2 months off and kind of spent time trying to get my head around what I'm going to do. In July, started officially, and then I started getting into the meat and the heart of our meetings. Okay, now my fellow executives that are here, they know we don't sometimes have a life, because we are permanently in board packs, one after other. And I thought to myself, what have I done to myself? How much meeting have I done in 1 month? Okay, I didn't know what awaited me. But when I started, I decided, no, none of this first 100 days book.
So it's not all that glamorous, that's what you say.
I was just like, there's no first 100 days, it's the first 1,000 days. Okay. After 1,000 days, somebody can ask me about how I'm doing. And then in no time, I think Alan left me to chair ELCO, which is a very technical committee. It oversees our treasury activities. It is actually the heart of banking. And I thought, but Alan, I'm still trying to understand and get to grips with these aspects. Alan said, no, it's fine. We were in one meeting, you do understand. You'll be fine. And you're with this one, they'll support you. I thought, okay, now this is not good. I said, this is not the definition of being set up for success here. And he says, no, you're fine. And then I was in Zambia. I think FNB Zambia was turning 10 years. And off to go make a speech there. And I said to Alan, okay, that's what I'm going to talk about. You know, you go bounce ideas of your line manager. And he says, that sounds fantastic. But you know what, in future, don't even come check with me. You're doing fine, Mary. You're doing so fantastic. I said, you know, you left me in the deep end. He says, but you're swimming beautifully.
Sometimes that's exactly what you need, right?
So yeah, so I mean, I think that's and he said, no, but look, and I think the one conversation he had with me, he said, Mary, just remind me again, like, what's your experience? What experience do you have? And he says, don't forget it. I mean, so there's the people that you're working with, yes, they might have 20 years of banking experience, but they don't have the experience you have. So what you bring is different. So anyway, so I think big credit to Alan, because I think at the beginning, particularly, and he never allowed me to have self-doubt. If anything, he just then left me. And I always knew I could count on his support, but I mean, I guess he created the necessary condition.
And that's called sponsorship, right? I mean, he believed in you, he made you believe in yourself, and I think that's a very big thing around change, around transformation, around embracing and ensuring that there is inclusivity. I think it's an important point to.
No, it's very important, because I think if you find yourself in a big organization and you are concerned that if you make a mistake, nobody's going to catch you, or that could be your last, I think you show up rather differently. And also I think just people, you know, just somebody just coming in and saying, you can join this meeting. That small moment of what sponsors do is critical. Otherwise, then you're not really part of the conversation. So, look, I mean, it was also important for him that the experiment was a success, because FirstRand has not really had a lot of outsiders. I think maybe Caesar hadn't grown within FirstRand, but I mean, he had been here also for quite a long time, and he had been successful. So it was also quite important, because I think there needs to be a commitment by both people, and one has to want to see the other person succeed. So anyway, I think, yeah, kudos to Alan, and I think for FirstRand, what FirstRand then did well is, I think, prepare for leadership transition. Because you can have people, you can bring people in, but if the leadership seats aren't going to be available, okay, then the outcome can also be a very different one. So I do think that our wholesale changes, leadership changes that took place over the last 2 years have also been, they were well thought out, and I think all the different transitions that have had to take place, you know, I think they've happened well. I mean, Emery's here, CEO of R&B. I was on her interview panel, so I can't look at Emery now and say, Emery, I didn't choose you. Harry Kellen, who's the CEO at FNB, him and I were fellow executive directors, and often we spoke about our next paths. So even how we resolve issues is different. We know each other, and then in FNB. I mean, I guess our customer segments are quite big. So, I mean, FNB itself, its profit before tax about 30 billion, made up of half retail, half FNB's commercial. So if you look at some of our peers, you know, those are segment seats. Okay, but in our structure, they sit a little bit because we've got a bit of a super segment strategy. But if I look at the people that are running these sub-segments, so that are running the retail business is co-headed by Latanya Johnson and Sizwe Madana, and I mean that's about a 15 billion rand business. I was on their interview panel, you know. So again, those are not leaders that I can say where did they come from. And so we're very deliberate as well during that time when we had, because the people that were in those roles, it's not like they resigned, but it was part and parcel of just saying, okay, but I think it's time for these people to get the exposure. FNB Commercial, it's also another one that I'm very proud of. Mike Naidu started in January, and then very pleased that Ganam CB has taken over from Andiswa, business banking, and that's again another 15 billion rand business, also headed by Sipho Silinde. So, like, I didn't appoint Sipo, if he's not here, it wasn't okay, but all those people, I mean, I had a say on the talent grid that was there, that informed who's there. So I guess in the time that I've been here, I've been part and parcel of processes that are going to ensure there is a future pipeline.
And I was going to ask you about that. Is there visibility? If I work at R&B or within the FirstRand group, do I have visibility on what the future prospects are for me as a woman, as a black person, as just a professional within the organization?
I think we're trying to get better at it. It would be good actually if that question was answered by one of the people in the organization. But I mean, we are. I think in the past, we can see people have shaped their career. They've stayed for a long time. So why? It's probably because they saw a path for themselves. And I think that one of the challenges that we acknowledge is that when the conversation doesn't take place, particularly with the younger generation we spoke about, then they look around and they say, okay, there's nothing here for me, I'm off somewhere else. So we are trying to be a bit more intentional around having the conversations. Certainly the people that for me will be part of my succession, I know I need to tell them that I see them as such, but obviously nothing is ever guaranteed, and you're having this conversation with 20 people, but just so that there is an understanding that there are opportunities. And I guess opportunities are not just leadership opportunities, but actually our group, the strength of our group is really the people who are deep subject matter experts. So even for some of those people to know that they can do what they do, and that's important for the group, and that can be their thing. I mean, there are people who, if they said, oh, they're not there today, okay, we would look around and say, sure, okay, how are we going to do this in Treasury? And I mean, that's where the conversations need to take place, because people shouldn't necessarily look up and say, oh, but how many opportunities are there? Because there's a variety of experiences that people can have. But most importantly, I think it's expertise, because particularly in the industry in which we work in. So I hope we are getting better. I mean, we've got a deliberate talent management process. Jola Godisam, who's a human capital head, is very diligent. He books out many hours in my diary book. And I'm trying to say, no, okay, cool. So you need all this time. And we sit. We go through Emery's team. She presents who she sees as talent, who's moved through the organization, and we look and say, okay, but Emery, this is what you said 2 years ago. Where are these people? And then she said, okay, some have moved to certain places. So and it gives me an opportunity to really engage with the names of our talent. Some of the people I bump into, I know the name because I've seen it, because their leaders have said, this and so, that's one of our upcoming stars. So so we do that across the group. It's it's quite an involved process, but it's important.
And related to that, is in 1995, of course, probably the institution was mainly male and pale, right? And there has definitely been a change in that regard in terms of women and black people. But do we feel it at a cultural level? So has the institution changed culturally? Do I feel that as an African working at R&B or within the FirstRand group, that my work makes a difference? It's different to how we used to approach business in 1995 or 2000. Does my view matter? Does that diverse view actually influence anything? Are we doing anything differently, or have we just all come in and assimilated to how things have always been, and we're just maintaining the status quo?
It's a good question. Again, one that I would like to hear comments from the people in the room, because some of the people actually that are in this room, I'm looking at Vicky for instance, they would have been in the organization for like 15 years. So I think they're always best placed, and later on around Q&A, those are good questions that they can reflect on how they see the cultural evolution of the group. So I would say that even in the time that I've been here, the group evolves. The group evolves because you get different people coming in, playing different roles, so that shapes the culture in a particular way. There are certain things that we are proud of, that are part of our heritage, that we preserve. I mean, one of them is our owner-manager culture. One that some people in the organization say, yeah, but okay, it's not time for us to evolve from our owner-manager culture because it does not promote collaboration. But it's actually such a fundamental philosophy. As hard as it is sometimes in an integrated business to drive, but it is one of empowerment. It is one where I think the founders were absolutely spot on to go, okay, the person who really knows more about the business is that person, not the one who sits there. And so how do you empower them and how do you ensure a culture of accountability? So I'll say that things that we realize are part of our heritage, that we work hard to preserve, and has been here. The tension when you change the operating model and it's a bit more integrated, the organization changes and shifts. But yeah, I'd say the things actually really that have made this group successful. People preserve very closely. And then I think the environment is competitive. The environment doesn't allow us to be complacent and not change. And so therefore, I think, I am pleased about the fact that we are a learning organization. We are an evolving organization. It feels that way to me. But as I say that, I think it's always better to get the perspective from the people who live within the belly of the organization.
Others have said that the culture, whilst on the one hand is good in terms of giving people opportunity who've been around and improving themselves, it can also play or create a gatekeeper kind of a situation where if you've not been around or you're not part of the boys club, then your chances of success are limited. How do you see that? Do you think that's a problem?
Yeah, but I think those are barriers that that exist in places whereby there's a system that operates a particular way, and that system is asked to change. And I guess across industries, you can see that. I mean, a lot of what the US is also dealing with the fallout on diversity and inclusion is exactly that. So I think one always has to be quite conscious of ways that you're entering a space that's being asked to change. Okay, because then you have a much more difficult time than a person who comes in years later when the place looks different. It's the same work, okay, but it's a different level of effort that's required for you to tackle that. So you could work in an environment in a group where you come in and it's diverse. Okay, so then you don't have to deal with the exclusion issues. You could go work in an environment that is, you go there and it's still male dominated for whatever reason. And I suppose because you're a big group, there could be components of those. I mean, I'm always fascinated by the asset management industry. The asset management industry, when we go on roadshows and I look at the people who ask us questions, who manage money, and I think, but after all these years, how is it possible that, okay, there's black CIOs, black portfolio managers, okay, I know we did hire one from outside of the sector, but that's an industry that's quite slow to respond in a very visible space. So, but again, I think it's because, okay, well, I think the asset allocators are also perhaps not playing ball, but it's environments actually that existed in a particular way where you are asking them to have a different outcome. So unless there's going to be a deliberate plan, Polo, I think it's hard. And I think even for some of the people who are doing things in an environment that's changed, but perhaps not sufficiently, I think it remains challenging, but it can be done. I think it can be done, and I think for the young professional, my advice is always that if it's frustrating, look around, check, and see whether this is actually the first time it's been done. Because I think sometimes we often forget to look back. I always look at the people that came before us and think about what they had to overcome. And I think, okay, if they could do it, and the place looked like it did, okay, surely I can. So how do I resource myself? How do I ensure I've got a network? But yeah, one has to be quite conscious of the fact that, okay, sometimes you are lucky enough to go work in an environment that looks different, but often I think you can come across a system that is still needs change, and you need to do your own heavy lifting.
And then it leads me to, there's a nice segue to what I think is probably a tough question. You might think it's unfair, but I'll ask it anyway. So what is your sense of where the FirstRand Group is from a transformation perspective, and what is your plan to shift things from where they are to a different picture?
Fortunately, I am not feeling uncomfortable about that one, because we've made such good progress.
Okay.
I mean, I think when I joined the group, there was always this narrative that, okay, but FirstRand doesn't seem to be transformed. Because if you looked at our management ranks inside, okay, the numbers would not be too dissimilar. Okay, but what do people look for? They want to see representation at a senior level, which I think is fair. And to that, I think we are making progress. I mean, the group executive structure is almost, let me just use 46%, because you know, to move from 46% to 51, I might be here for the next 4 years. So let me be precise and say it's almost half, almost half of the team is black. And if I look at our management ranks, our senior management ranks, and I look at where we were in 2021, let's say we're about 44% senior management black representation, we're now sitting at 52%. So, you know, there is a concerted effort. And for me, because we are big, I'm hardly ever impressed by the numbers. Okay, you always think, okay, it's FirstRand, we need to have the numbers, we need to meet our targets. But if I look at what the people in those senior management are doing, if I look at what they're doing, you know, like what I was quoting earlier on, the people that are running big businesses, you know, I look at the promotions, because you have to look at the substance of what people are actually doing. So Polo, that actually, for me, I think we're on the right track. So I have no doubt that, you know, we'll continue doing that. I think, you know, already some of these things also start to happen organically. Because the leaders that I am able to show off on, as much as I was on that panel, I didn't prepare them. Actually, they were probably prepared during Caesar's time. You know, there are people who've been in the bank for at least 15 years, for at least 20 years. So if we make sure that the pipelines are full of talented people, we give them opportunities, you know, that will shift. But it's actually being deliberate and intentional about creating opportunities. Because sometimes somebody has to say, Mary, that's all very nice, we've heard enough from you, it's time for the next person. And I think that's always kind of the best way of making sure that your talent pools are refinished. So, yeah, so Polo, you can keep me accountable, but I can assure you that we will keep at the current momentum that we are going at, and that the profile and the face of FirstRand, you know, I think it is different.
Hopefully the gender too.
Hey, Polo, I'm not doing well on gender.
This is Women's Month, so yeah, we need to do something about it.
I always call
and women make the best financial decisions. I don't know why they're not the ones.
I hold myself accountable. The team knows that, you know, and actually we've needed to make a few appointments on our group executive to make sure that from a strategy point of view we can focus. So one of them was, let's say, payments. I think just looking at the environment, we wanted to make sure that we've got executive capacity here to ensure that our strategies are leading. Okay, and then we had a chief digital officer, Kevin Mitchell, who's joined us to shape that. We've got Munir Ishmael, who's joined us to help with the corporate bank and F&B commercial enterprise. So now it's all great because I can tick the fact that I am making progress on our strategic priorities and things that I think will shape the business differently going forward. But when I looked, I'm like, they're all men. So anyway, at our leadership conference, I held myself accountable. Yeah.
So numbers are going to hold you.
Thank goodness I've got Emery there. So Emery, we have to work hard at this.
The two of you will hold you both accountable. The next time we have this conversation, we expect to hear more women being mentioned.
Yeah. So you know, and I think the big challenge is that, you know, you see why I refer back to the 10 years of talent. If you look back, because if I look at the management ranks and I see a proper overrepresentation of men, it means that I'm going to struggle. I'm going to struggle to have the females come through. So we're going to have to work harder. It's going to take us a little bit longer than I can. I think just say, okay, I've got a diverse team here. So I think that's something that receives a lot of my focus. I would love to be succeeded by a woman. I mean, that would really be great because then we break all the firsts. Okay, then there's, we can have continuity, but that might be my harder challenge.
But between you and Nana and Emery, I think we will be able to come up with a plan. Super plan. I'm quite confident of that. I think at this point we can go to the Q&A. I don't know where Kaya is. Oh, I didn't see you there. You were sitting behind me, but thank you so much for that.
All right. Thank you very much, and a big round of applause to our team. So we are going to give you an opportunity to ask difficult questions. If your questions are not difficult, I'm not going to feed them to the CEO, because we want to ask the challenging questions. So we have a couple of mics that will be going around the room, and as soon as I see them, I'll show you where they are. So the one very cool thing about FirstRand is that I've been paid to do all the protocols. So please get straight to the question, so that we have given as many people the opportunity to ask the questions as possible. I will start with maybe 3 hands in the room, starting from this table first. See, they're very shy. Then the BMF. That's 2. And I'm also taking questions from the online platform.
Thank you. I feel like I should stand. Firstly, my name is Leteka. Thank you, Polo. Thank you, Mary. I came here today just to bask in all of this and enjoy it and to give you your flowers. My question is around you spoke about representation, especially on gender. We currently, South Africa is the only nation that is a permanent member of the G20. We are hosting. It's a historic milestone. It's also a strategic opportunity to uplift the continent. And we know that to uplift the GDP of the continent, women cannot be left behind in that space. And we talk about representation in the workspace. We talk about women-owned and women-led businesses. And you mentioned something around collaboration. As I was listening to you, I was thinking that this year is a convergence of many milestones. It is 40 years since 1985, when the UN, third UN conference took place in Nairobi, and where gender mainstreaming was first introduced as a strategy. Then Beijing 30 years later, and South Africa 2005. And one of the things I'm sitting here and thinking of, that most of us who are sitting here are already privileged because we are in the room. I come from the villages of the Eastern Cape, and I was laughing because I found so many people here from the rural areas. And I know how marginalized people are. And just as a backdrop, youth unemployment sitting at 46 came out today. And women still make up a huge number. And one conversation I was thinking and I'm having in my head was, when it comes to moving the dial, there's the corporate space, and we know that corporate, is not going to create jobs for everybody, and there's a need to support women-owned and women-led businesses. And all of these conversations, it happens to be Women's Month today, and we know that G20 will come and go, but we'll still be here, and it's an opportunity to really transform and move the dial. And my question is one, and is there an opportunity, you think, Mary, from a private, public perspective where we can come together as institutions, be it banks, be it DFIs, be it corporates, to really try and move the dial from what we say and what we do, because we know the numbers are not necessarily translating into results. And there's also isolated work that needs to be done. Is there an opportunity to go to shared accountability, and maybe from competitors to collaborators in trying to move the dial? There's us, I always say in the business class lounge, there's those who are not here. And for me, the question is, do you really want to take the opportunity? And this is not just for you, it's a question for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question from there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Comfort Matoki, the Provincial Chairperson of Black Management Forum Young Professionals. And thank you so much, Mamero Vilakazi, for such a great journey. It's like we can just keep clapping each and every time we reflect on your journey. It's amazing and very inspiring. My question is, considering your experience in the professional space and now being at the helm in the professional space, what would your the next 30 years forecast of the professional space look like for you, with the reliance on artificial intelligence to make decisions, to do our work more efficiently, the hybrid working, some financial and other institutions fully working online? Is the professional space having a guarantee of authenticity and credibility in the next 8 years, according to your view? Thanks.
Thank you, Comfort. There's also just one third question that I'll pose before you try to attempt them, and it's from Ms. Wendy Luhabe, who says, what challenges would you say strengthened your competence and confidence throughout your career?
Is it the main? Is Wendy Luhabe?
Yep, the one you know.
Hello, this is Wendy. Okay, so let me deal with the 30-year one outlook, because I think that's a short answer. One, I certainly for sure won't be here. I want to make sure that that they know I am going to leave in the next decade. But the environment is changing a lot. So I think one has to be so committed to learning, reinventing yourself. As technology enables us to do different things, work at different pace, and also just I think for a lot of young professionals, you're more likely to have many different careers actually within your lifetime, within the next 30 years. And financial services will look different. I think if you look at retailers, you look at telcos, you look at what they're doing, there are so many fintechs all doing banking services. So yeah, so I do think that even just financial services is going to change a lot. I think it's going to be more interesting work that people get to apply themselves to. But again, maybe to the unemployment one, maybe the employment looks different. But I am an optimist in that regard. I do think if I think about what technology and how life has changed in the last 10 years, we certainly are living, we've got better tools. Despite all the other problems that we have, uncertainty, it is a better life and a better environment than we had in so many instances. So I think one's commitment to ongoing learning and I think reinventing ourselves as professionals to make sure we stay relevant. Yeah. So I think that's perhaps what I will say. Thank goodness I don't have to reinvent myself too much. When I'm done here, I'm going to work with people. Hopefully I get to work with young people. I get to coach and see people live up to their potential. So I can sit on the couch a little bit and commentate. I won't be in the ring anymore in 30 years' time. And I think thank you for the question on reflecting on women and particularly the youth, because there's a lot more that needs to go into interventions that are going to result in financial inclusion. And I mean, that's not, I think we've evolved from knowing that we're not talking about availability of products. It's making means of capital and means of production actually available to people so they can grow, they can have their own businesses, they can fulfill their dreams. And I mean, women play such a critical role because we know that for every small SME that is women-run, and I think if you look at the ecosystem of support, how women bring up lots of children, children that are not theirs, look after the villages, we know that that's critical work. So at F&B, particularly F&B commercial, I mean, that's a very big focus area of us. Okay, so, and we also know that what do people get exasperated with banks is that, okay, they don't get a loan. Why? Because we come and we need security, we need to see visibility of cash flows. But remember, we need to do all of that because we are lending on other people's money. Okay, we are custodians of R1 trillion of deposits, and those depositors need to ensure that the Reserve Bank looks to us to make sure that we are being responsible. So where we get to those areas whereby we can't overextend our balance sheet, we've been very proactive in working with DFIs. I think just last week we signed an agreement with the IFC to enable us to go further in that market. And not because the credit is not good, in actual fact, I think if you look at the books of a lot of DFIs, when they lend to small businesses and they lend to women-owned businesses, the experience is much better. Okay, but I think it's getting access to those kind of facilities that can, that can enable us, I think, to do a lot more. So, yeah, but I think the most important part for me is I can sit here and I can say, this is what we need to do. But it's actually the people in the business that have to be excited about the fact that it's important to go look for those small businesses and enable them. Zibu, who looks after our points of presence, and our branches network, and looks after about 10,000 people. She's very excited about going into communities where she knows the people, she knows what resources are required, and they make things happen and enable resources for those communities. So for me, that actually is what gives me a lot more comfort, that we are actually doing this. And I think what we spoke about, because I also think it's pointless if we actually transform the leadership benches, but we don't actually really see how it actually impacts the ultimate product and how we support people from various walks of life. And I can say that the F&B teams are doing their best. And your point on collaboration, because the IFC facility, we might have built and come up with some of the innovation. Yula is nodding there, she's a lawyer, on the structure. But what's been created, we don't keep it as part of our IP. We actually want all the banks to have access to it, because for us, ultimately, we only thrive when the communities that we support are doing well. So, yeah, I think for us, that's business. That's not the work of our foundations. That's actually the core work of the bank, but okay, we need some help because we look after depositors' money here, and we've got constraints in terms of what the bank can do. Remind me of Ms. Wendy's question.
Competence and sorry, let me find it. There's been a floodgate of questions here.
Oh, sorry.
So many. You're very popular. She said, what challenges would you say strengthened your competence and confidence through your career?
I'd say the challenges that strengthen my competence in my career are moments actually when I was not successful. I think many people would say, every time the door closed, it was always a moment of deep reflection and thinking about, okay, what can I do from here? Other times the door opened just out of luck, by the way. But I think it's always those moments when things don't really go my way, that are real opportunities for growth. And I mean, Polo was referring to what happens when you don't crack the inner circle. It's hard, but you learn. You can either look at the inner circle and say, it's okay, you stay there, but that's not what I had set out to do. I wanted to get inside. And I think it's in those moments actually where my growth has come from. Having to fight hard and not succeeding.
All right. We're going to turn this into a speed dating session, so we need the questions to be as brief as possible so we can include as many as possible. Can I take 2 more hands while I consolidate some questions here online? There's one from this full table. Oh, the full table. And then there's Mark and our lady there at the back. Please stand so that Graham can pick up. Yeah,
I don't have a question. My boss said Vicky must answer, so I figured I need to answer. So the question for Polo was, has things changed since back then? So I joined 2007, so I've been here in FirstRand 18 years. And the first thing that brought me here was the culture of FirstRand. I was auditing the banks. I was at PwC as well. And in the banking division, FirstRand was one of my clients, and the culture here was just, I was clear. The first choice to come to FirstRand because of the culture. The good thing about it is that the culture has not changed, and I saw people who are happy to be here, who want to be here. So the culture has not changed. And back then, yes, the table around was different. And now, I joined here and I found a lot of innovative, a very innovative space. And then after I landed, I realized that, there's a feeling of being heard. I was still an accountant, junior, and I was hurt. And in my view, people are still being hurt. and people are getting credit for what they've done. There's innovation awards, so we won't have a Vodacom issue. Vodacom is basically. And I think just the last thing is that now when Mary was appointed as CEO, I guess in my mind, and for all the young people who are here, it gives the belief that I can do that. I can be counted as a CEO. So that's my view, and I believe a lot of people agree with it. But that's why I'm here for 18 years. I'm still happy, so thank you.
Thank you. From the School of Johannes Prospect. Many, many years ago. All right. There's two questions there from the back. Anna, the mic is not miking.
Hi, Mary.
Yeah.
Hi, Polo. My name is Zoda from R&B. So my question is around when you're talking about how difficult it is to crack the inner circle sometimes, and my question is around how can I go outside hardworking? How can I actually go about building a strong network that actually enable me to actually perhaps score a sponsor as well? Because there's an element of obviously for you to, the sponsor chooses you, you don't choose the sponsor. So yeah, so my question is around how do I actually go about building a stronger network outside hardworking?
Thank you. Mark?
Hi, thank you. My name is Mark Davids. I've got a question. It's regarding one of the comments you made earlier regarding the generational challenge. And I'm going to bring it a bit broader. In an economy where we've seen 15 years of less than 1% growth, that's the statement. My first job was in the early 2000s, not to give my age away, and it was a growing economy at about 4% per annum. And for me, the question coming back to the generational issue is saying we've got baby boomers who are our leaders. We've also now got millennials and Generation X's who are now in the workforce in senior leadership positions. How then do we differentiate or manage the complexity of principles which our baby boomer leaders are holding on to, and the reality that perhaps the millennials are looking at and saying, I can't find a job. So how do you as a leader manage that significant dichotomy in the context that I laid out? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. Mary, good luck.
I think that's, that is a challenge perhaps that I haven't actually had to deal with because of where FirstRand operates and the caliber of the people that are here. So you've got a macro question, but I want to just bring it to the micro level at FirstRand because, I guess we are spoiled with having talented people and still in an environment where we are growing as an organization. Because I think when you start experiencing the constraints of not growing, as an organization first, then I think they start becoming a lot more acute to the points that you make. But at a country level, no doubt, that's what we are dealing with. I mean, when the economy grows at 0.4% and we look the next 2 years and GDP growth of 1%, and we've got all these structural constraints, it does mean that the social challenges increase. I think there is less to go around. So if you look back to the early 2000s that you mentioned when we started growing, I mean, I remember making a presentation for partnership, and all I'd ever seen was an economy that was just growing. Those graphs look different, So we do need to get back there, and I think part of the work we do with as business B4SA, working with the presidency and national treasury on putting momentum behind the structural economic reforms are exactly to deal with some of these broader issues. Because having said what I said about FirstRand at a micro level, if the macro doesn't change, we all start even increasingly hitting those constraints. We know our customers and our clients are experiencing that. We know communities that we live in are not thriving for particularly that reason. So, I think long story short, to just say, please, may I not live with those conditions at the FirstRand level. May we continue to grow. It's important to find growth in many other ways because the issues around talent and succession and having exciting opportunities, you need a growing business, you need a growing economy. And okay, there I think there's a lot of work actually that business leaders, and myself included, put in to ensure that we are providing capacity to the state to tackle some of the other constraints, hopefully so that we can lift our GDP potential over the next few years. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, I think things that one has to navigate, but may I not experience periods of no growth in FirstRand. And I mean, okay, network, I think as you were asking your question, you struck me as a person who is capable of being quite deliberate around breaking out of the circle, being conscious about your environment, building. I mean, that's the nice thing about ABSIP. I used to love being a member of ABSIP, AWCA, ABASA. I was active in all of that because I got to work with people in other organizations, and that's a network that you automatically tap into. So yeah, but you strike me as already being deliberate. And as you asked the question, I wondered what you should be sharing.
She answered herself.
She answered herself.
By being in this room already. So the very difficult questions are coming up now. So the topic of the week is the Basel III requirements. Are they currently designed in a manner that depresses the capacity to finance, particularly infrastructure in South Africa? So there are a couple of questions that want to hear your view on the back of what Sim Chabalala and Bunki Modise have said. So that's the first one, particularly in a year where South Africa has got the unique opportunity to lead a lot of conversations. The second one is the question of if you could rewrite one rule in corporate South Africa to accelerate black women's success, what would it be? And the third one is a question that speaks about South Africa today, where economic survival is a daily struggle for many. How can women leaders ensure that their rise to the top also paves the way for thousands more to join them?
Okay, so let's do the Basel III reforms. So one, I appreciate where the South African Reserve Bank comes from. Okay, we are a small country, really in a large grouping of big economies. Okay, so the South African Reserve Bank has always wanted, and I suppose across the financial services and different sectors in South Africa, where we've always wanted to be with the best in the world. And remember, we're a small country, so you do actually have to impress. I also understand that. You can't come and you really carve out for certain requirements, and you are not fully in. So I appreciate where the Reserve Bank's coming from, wanting to make sure that our country is seen to be performing, to be at a higher standard. Okay, but banks' balance sheets, unfortunately, have become, the capital pressure, the capital requirements have unfortunately increased pressure on the bank's balance sheets, and they do reduce the capacity that we have available to lend. Okay, so last year we all tried through BASA, we engaged with the Reserve Bank and says, okay, why don't you follow suit from what's happening in the world, also move out this Basel III, the remaining Basel reform implications. So we all tried, and the numbers are staggering around how much more lending capacity there could be that's going to go into capital requirements. But I do have sympathy for what the Reserve Bank agenda they're driving, because when they show you the number of countries who have already fully adopted all the Basel reforms, and they said, okay, but why would there be an exclusion when Australia is already there, when Canada is already there? There are other countries outside of the US and the UK who are also part of the G20. So anyway, my regulators are on the line there. I've not thrown them under the bus. But I think we have to work quite hard to just make sure that we are sweating available resources and really thinking very differently around how else do we allow financing to take place off the back of other financial resources apart from what's on our own balance sheet. And can I also just say the last thing is that, I think it's when you have banks that experience fragility, okay, that you go back to thank the regulator. We could go through COVID, they, as taxing as the capital requirements are, they also ensure that we are a resilient and strong sector, and we can absorb shocks. So, yeah, I think that's it's already done. So I guess we all tried hard last year to try and shift that particular one. So it's about adapting seeing how we can optimize our current positions. I have not forgotten the other point.
If you could rewrite one rule in corporate South Africa to accelerate the advancement of women, what would it be? And also, how do we ensure that the rise of women leaders like you paves the way for many others to come?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one is actually being aware, because I think the lack of awareness that okay, you don't have enough women in the room, that's actually the source of the problem. Because when you do, at an early age of women's career, and you ensure that that the teams are diverse, and if there was constant commitment to just making sure, because when we recruit professionals in particular that join the bank, okay, the representation is not a problem. Okay, but then where the women go, it still remains a mystery. Okay, we know that we've got issues around having to take time off their career for babies and all of that, but I would hope now that we are so much better at doing those things. I sincerely would hope. So I suspect it's because somebody doesn't sit back and say, where are the women in the room? And so, yeah, I mean, I hold myself accountable by just saying I've got some work to be done here. Because it is quite important to just say it's not okay to not have an environment that is actually diverse and not have women. So I think it's being conscious, I would say. I think it's just a conscience, I don't know why I'm choosing to say this word.
Conscientization. But maybe on that one, Mary, I think it's such an important point because it's something that we've tried to deal with in the past as ABSIP, where we've noticed, for instance, the rise of women professionals into senior positions, and they get into those positions, but the culture in that position is so hostile to being a woman that you have no choice but to leave. So I think it is important that we are very intentional around how do we then ensure that corporate South Africa actually embraces the fact that there is another gender in the room, in that position, and it has to be as comfortable for them to show up at work as much as their male counterparts. And I think it does require significant adjustments, and I'm not sure how intentional we've been as a sector.
I think, yeah, intentionality is important, but I also think people need role models as well, because, the fact that, can I make an example about you? Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think the fact that I think we have Emily, who talks at a conference about, okay, I can't do this because I have to go watch my boys perform, or I have to prioritize something to do with my kids, and I know she shares it widely with her team. I mean, I've certainly had some of her team members. I made eye contact with one of them. Yeah, but I mean, I think those are such important. Those are such important moments because if there are no role models and you don't have an environment where you think where it's going to be supportive of what you need to balance, because Polo, it's hard. I mean, I actually think this gig of being a mother and a professional at the same time is one of the hardest things you can try and actually get together. So you need an environment that is sensitive, obviously leaders that are going to be sensitive, and I think you also need role models. Yeah. Because if you don't see role models that are pushing and balancing things and living life in an imperfect way, I think you might then give up. And so maybe the importance of networks is exactly that always remember there's somebody going through what you're going through. You sometimes have to just work harder to find them, and I think maybe that's still the challenge that I think a lot of the senior managers, or at least middle managers, that need to move up and not give up.
Yeah. And I suppose the challenge for yourselves, and it's funny that we're making examples of you and Emery and Nana in this particular room, because I suppose you occupy the positions. You almost need to play that role. You almost need to be that senior person who brings that child to work. You almost need to be that senior person who does what you're saying Emery does. You almost need to be that senior person who says, look, time out because it's family time. Because that gives us permission. Because if we don't give those who come after us permission to do that, then they will always think that there's a ceiling. If I'm a mother, then there's a ceiling. When there should never be a ceiling, but the environment should actually be conducive to you being a successful mother, but at the same time a successful executive.
Hey, successful mother's hard, ne?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I always say, I think the journey is about just trying to just be good enough, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, that always feels less overwhelming for me.
Sure.
Because it is one of those choices that when you make, to have children and stay employed, that I think are rather hard, and I do think that our organizations still have a long way to just make sure that I think that those additional moments of support.
Yeah.
But I'm always encouraged when I look at a group of women, firstly that are senior, and I think I was at the R&B conference last week and actually chatting to a number of them, and who've got kids. Because I know that for them, there are a number of young other women that are looking at them and thinking that that's quite possible.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of infrastructure. I've named a number of people who are Nana's colleagues. So I always think, I've done my piece by at least just having stayed the course with 4 children. I've done my bit. But I need to see it. I need to see it further down, because I think it's this role modeling piece around the fact that it's possible. And making sure that there's a much bigger number of us.
Yeah.
Because there is, that one day will create the required momentum.
And I think that's the next phase, by the way, of transformation. We have to feel transformation. It should not just be about, do you have women, do you have black people? You should also feel like, do I feel at home? Am I really included? Or am I, as I said earlier, are we just assimilating and meeting the status quo, or is the environment changing to also accommodate what our needs are?
Polo, I want to challenge you though, because I always say that if you look at the demographics of our country, at some stage we have to flip the question around. I mean, it might not be now, but I think we need to, I'd like by the fact that when I go, for us to have, because if I look at our junior manager grade, I don't know what the numbers are, but okay. I would say they're representative of South Africa. Yeah. Middle management, also up there. Challenges are senior management, because that's really where we've lagged for a long time. And senior management is your pipeline to top management, which, as I said, at senior management, we're sitting at 52%. But in 10 years' time, I think that number will be very different. You actually start going to an environment whereby there are actually quite a lot of black people in the organization. There already are, but I mean, they're not at the management level. But I mean, in 10 years' time, I'd like to flip that question around, because then surely, I then need to look at a few other people and just say, okay, is this the right culture? Is this actually what we want to show? But I want to just, but my belief though is that the organizations that we are leading at the moment are transforming, and there will be a time when the senior manager numbers reflect that. And I think it's so important that then we are not questioning ourselves around assimilation, but actually that we are owning the business. What I was saying about when I listened to the F&B teams responding to the needs of the spaza shop, going into the township to make sure that there's a right product. Okay. Well, for me, that's a different, that's responding to the business needs in a very different way. And I think in a way that needs to increase, because ultimately that's really going to be the part that's impactful. And so the senior manager numbers will come, and I know we could be still looking to have the same conversation, but I think we also have to look at it and say, okay, are the businesses different?
Yes.
Are they playing a different role?
Are we responsive to the needs of South Africans in the products that we develop?
How much happier with that challenge?
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. I think you covered one of the key questions. It was from Bailey, who said, how do you want your leadership at FirstRand Group to be remembered in 10 or 20 years' time? We will take 2 more hands from the floor, and that will be the very last time we get to questions from the floor. So if you like, you can raise your hand. There's one hand here. The right wingers are not participating. One last right winger here. So over to you.
My name is Pele Sangonyama. I come from 91 all the way from Cape Town. I represent asset management, and yes, we do have black people in asset management. And females. But I'm encouraged by this conversation in the sense that I like the way you use words. You deliberate, intentional, you are aware, and you are inclusive. I mean, if they ask you a question that you can't answer, you refer the question to your team members. That's encouraging to me. And I was going to ask the question around being a mother, but then I think you answered that. But now the question is, how to make sure that we create environments that are inclusive in young women that still want to start families. Let's not talk about those that have kids already, but a 25-year-old who says, I'm a CA, I'm here, I'm a specialist, but I would love to go off the boat. But I want to make sure that when I'm on the boat again, I'm remembered and I'm known and my career progresses. So how to make sure that, yes, it's going to be deep for a year or two, but the environment that I'm in is inclusive enough, is encouraging enough, that yes, you can get off here at the station, we'll pick you up there and we'll still move off. Are we creating an environment that is inclusive at that level? Because there's a missing need where we've got youngsters, we've got mothers, we've got men, but then they are 25-year-olds, 26, they still want to get married, they want to have kids, they're making those decisions in an environment where the pace is so fast that if you're off, you're worried that will I still have space when I come back? That's a fair question.
All right, Elisa, Masiabi. Mike. Okay.
Good evening. Hello?
It's off.
It's off.
It's off duty.
1, 2. Yeah. Good evening, Osmary and Mohau. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to listen to you. I will not stop calling you Osmary. Firstly, I would like to commend you. I mean, I'm a mother at St. Mary's, and as much as you are recognizing your colleague here, you are just as committed to being a family woman yourself. I've often wondered how it is that you are able to drop off your kids every morning at school, you attend the events at school, you are a board member, you are integrally involved in your kids' lives. So I just like to put it out there so people also know the type of person that you are. My question is around FirstRand Group. How do you balance the local focus relative to the African focus? And I'm more interested in how are you creating, how are you developing the African continent? What is your strategy for the next 10, 20 years within Africa? Thank you.
All right, thank you. One just follow-up question based on what was deliberated earlier on. The Basel requirements are very good, being part of the G20 is very good, but the question is, does South Africa not have a tendency of aiming for world-class standards when it still has very, very deep grassroots problems that it needs to solve? And I think we've seen multiple manifestations of that where, according to the world, you're awesome, but when you walk outside and you cross over the M1, people do not think so.
You can't, if you've decided you like belonging to a club, okay, then some of the club rules don't really suit you. You can leave, but for me, actually, I think the Reserve Bank, I think our finance ministry are centers of excellence. I think they represent actually what is good and actually inspiring about what we do. I have the privilege of going to the World Economic Forum. This year, I sat as part of a small grouping. I don't really know how I got to be there, but it was with governors, finance ministers, the top leading economists, and Leteka walked in, and the IMF CEO said, "Oh, I'm so happy you're here, Leteka, because you get you started targeting inflation earlier than everybody else. You get leading in uncertainty." And I mean, he heaped so much praise on Leteka. sitting there, I mean, it was a very small grouping. I sat there and I was very proud. So I'm just saying that I think I understand the constraints. I'm a banker. We lobbied against those, but I also step back and I go, you know, when we talk about logistics and electricity and all these constraints and SOEs that don't work, I also think we also have to talk about things that actually represent, that South Africa does well. And I do think that the South African Reserve Bank, they get it right. So if now and then they give you a regulation you don't like, okay, maybe I work in a highly regulated environment, I make peace and move on. But I also think it's important for South Africa to hold itself to high standards. You know, I think we will work around it. It's not the biggest constraint. I think growth is our biggest constraint, by the way. So I think if we tackle growth, we improve our rating, we reduce our funding costs in the country. I mean, I just think that there are a lot of other priorities that are going to create opportunity for us to finance the country's needs. And so let's leave the Reserve Bank to be excellent and be part of the G20. Yeah. So anyway, I mean that's kind of my view on if you want to be part of the big league.
Regional focus.
Okay. So I think on the children one, I don't really have anything more to say apart from I think role modeling is actually going to be probably the biggest game changer. When people have gone and come back into their careers and don't work for an environment that doesn't even bother giving maternity leave, and that will replace you. That will replace you when you go on maternity leave. Go find another environment, because I think there are a number of environments that have changed to even make it easier for fathers to actually be there for their kids, because this load is not just for mothers, it's for fathers. So I think the environments that give fathers, I think a much bigger period, perhaps. You know, when you choose a spouse, maybe find that one. Yeah, no, but I do think the more there is of us that have raised kids and been professionals and seen through, let's not forget the impact that it's going to have from a generational point of view. And then call out those environments that really need to evolve. Because the last time I checked, it's only women that can bear children. So I think it is important that we are in environments actually that will be supportive of that. Masebi, thank you for the recognition of St. Mary's. I also often see you there doing lots of work, and I know that you are a professional from Future Growth, which is very demanding, so my admiration goes to you too. On aspirations of FirstRand outside of South Africa, I'd say we've got big franchises and big businesses here in South Africa. So if you ask me what's the one that we mustn't take our eye off the ball, it's actually our local market. So as much as I've said low growth, and that's why I put a lot of my energy into things that are going to result in the structural constraints, the structural economic reforms that need to take place, because all those are important for our franchises here. So that's the first one. I mean, I think about 80% of our profits still come from South Africa. 10% comes from our business in the UK, and then about 10% comes from our portfolio in the rest of, in broader Africa and the rest of Africa, from about 8 countries. So there we've got runway. And we've got businesses that, not all of them, some of them are still in, I think are still quite small in their various markets. If you look at Botswana, Namibia, okay, we've got very big businesses there in those markets, number one. Always nice when the governor tells you that you're the biggest taxpayer in South Africa and in Botswana. So we've got good businesses that are outside of here, and then we've got markets where we can still grow, Ghana, Zambia. So there we're going to look for scale opportunities when they come around. We'd like to go to Kenya. We've been saying that for quite some time. So hopefully something opens up. We've increased their capital requirements significantly, not even because of Basel III, but just because that's what you can do when you want to drive consolidation. So hopefully we've got an opportunity there. But but I mean, I think we've got a diverse portfolio, and my expectation is that actually we grow on all fronts. So I don't sit here with a makeup of which businesses or which regions or portfolios should contribute what. I think as long as we are we are delivering compelling returns, and I think growing the business. Because that question that was asked, for me, the thing that will give me the biggest answer is if we stop growing, because then people will look and say, oh, maybe I need to go build my career somewhere else. So I think you need to make sure that we stay innovative and entrepreneurial and look for and take opportunities as they arise. So,
all right, thank you. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time. President Polo, I don't know if you'd like to give us one final word before we close off and trouble the barman, who must be getting ready by now.
No, I think this, as I started at the beginning, this is really a celebration of how far we've come. I think you represent many of our aspirations. In 1995, when ABSIP was started, we were not sure that we would see the day where somebody like you is sitting in the position that you're in. Not to put you under pressure, but we're very proud of you, and we wish you all the best. And I think so far, what you've said and what we've seen you do says that you are the right person for the job. So wishing you all the best into the future.
Thank you, Polo. And thanks to Kaya as well. Kaya mentioned that you've got somebody who works, a younger brother who works.
My younger brother works for her, my older sister works for you.
Yes, I know, but I said a whole family affair.
I'm the only one who's not here.
Yes, maybe you need to come back.
We'll talk about it.
Thanks for having me here.
No, thank you very much. An extraordinary leadership journey, and I think a journey that we'll all reflect on for many years to come. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to really detain you for the past couple of hours. Thank you very much to the team at R&B for facilitating this and for hosting us. Thank you very much, Emery. She's so cool. I saw at R&B Latitudes. She also organizes things like that. So thank you very much to everyone, and Nana and the team that organized and got it all together, and also to the team at ABSIP that not only organizes but also ensure that the bar is fully stocked. So thank you very much and have a safe trip, everybody. We'll definitely invite you to the next one. Thank you.
I enjoyed that.